First item is a discussion item, and that is the review of the Kids Crossing concept. So we'll start with getting a little bit of a preview and update from Blake and Eric, and then we'll move into public comment, and then we'll go through commission discussion. So,
if you don't mind, I could introduce.
Please.
On July 13th, we held a public information meeting, which was the publishing of the initial concepts for Kids Crossing. At that point, we opened a public comment period, soliciting input on these concept drawings. I think we received some really beneficial input that was included to you guys as well for consideration for this evening. One of the comments, of course, is the omission of some of the shade structures that were initially proposed within the concepts. They were proposed, just not reflected within the initial drawings. So what we'll see this evening is reflected with those originally designed shade structures on the interior of the park, as well as the full canopy of the trees, providing some additional shade as well. So that will be at least reflected in this drawing. Other than that, what I would expect this evening is you discuss any potential revisions, thoughts, and take into consideration the public comments that we received. And with that, I'll probably turn it over to Blake, and I'll have the drawings up on the board, and we can go through as you see fit. Scott, could you start screen share, please? Blake, is there anything you want to introduce or add as we go into this?
Thank you for unmuting me. I could not get that to go. You hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Yeah, thank you. So I thought the public input was great. We had a lot of good dialogue. I feel pretty comfortable with where the concept is based on the feedback we got in the public input. You know, the common thread that we saw was the desire for more shade, which, as you alluded to, Eric, was not accurately reflected in the renderings, specifically to highlight the equipment that was proposed. The other things that we heard was a little bit more clarity on what seating was to be provided. And again, in the renderings, the focus was really on the equipment, but I want to assure everyone that there is ample seating throughout the space of various types. I think we have 13 benches, 7 picnic tables, and then obviously the natural stone seat walls. So lots of different opportunities for caretakers and park goers to have a rest. Overall, I think the equipment was very well received, as was the layout. One of the highlights, I think, was the natural topography that we have built in to the otherwise very flat pancake site. So we saw a lot of very positive feedback about that hill and the connectivity of the hill over to the towers. So, Katie, anything to add from your perspective?
No, I think that pretty well covered it, but thank you for asking. So yeah, as Blake alluded to, and we'll see in these renderings, we are showing a centralized shade structure that will have multiple benches underneath it, and we're showing trees in this updated rendering that are full size. And so again, you know, as we're looking at this shade structure, you can see that in the rendering, it covers over a number of the benches underneath. Same thing with the trees, it starts to cover over the top of some of the playground equipment. So this helps to visually show why in the original renderings we had really scaled back the size of the trees and we weren't showing shade in there, because it kind of covers over some of the playground equipment and they really interfere with getting views of the equipment, which is what we were trying to focus on in most of the other views.
One of the other things I might mention, there were quite a few people who requested the inclusion of a zip line. And while we love that idea, zip lines take a very, very large footprint for a very limited number of users at any given time. And what we have discovered is that in play environments with surfacing such as the rubber or the turf, like we're doing, it becomes cost prohibitive. So what we have done is allocated space to the west of our main playground so that in the future, if you wanted to add a zip line feature, you could, and not be locked into the very expensive surfacing of the rubber or the turf. So just for what it's worth, there is the ability to add that on should there be a donation or additional funding available.
For reference, the west side of the playground is this hill area, just for context.
Yeah, just beyond our perimeter where we have the landscape beds, there's a larger grass area where we think it would. Well, we've measured it. We know that it would fit and be a nice ancillary add-on to the playground.
Yeah, so for the rendering that was just pulled up, it would be off screen to the right.
Okay.
I guess we would love some feedback and any questions that the park commissioners may have for us.
Yeah. I think we probably, many of us have thoughts and comments. I'll start before we just all kind of rattle off our thoughts. Clearly, you two have seen the community feedback as well. Any questions specifically before we dive into kind of giving our thoughts? All right. I think just for efficiency then, even though I don't need to jump to the front of the line, I'm going to do so just because I think basically just summarizing a bunch of the things that I saw repeated in a bunch of the different community feedback, many of which you've already touched upon, but just in summary, obviously shade was a big thing, and we know that you're very aware of that, and I think adding that shade structure in the renderings and showing the trees at full size will be really helpful for, as you've done, will be helpful for people to kind of get a better sense of that. So I think we're good there. Plus there's the shelter just off to the side too. So I think that's really going to help people understand that there is more shade there than it appears in the renderings. One thing that came up a few times was safety of runners, escapees, potential escapees, especially as it relates to the fence and the path. So I wondered if it might be worth considering adding or extending some fence on one of the two east or west sides to kind of bound it in a little bit more. I'm not sure that that's feasible or practical based on the layout, but something to look at. And then as well as preventing kids from running on into the path. I do think that we're pretty well covered there based on the planting beds. Obviously, they're not shown full of plants right now just for visibility, but when they have plants in them, they're going to be kind of at least that visual obstacle to keep people from running through. And I think that'll be relatively effective in some spots, but it might be worth looking at if that's worth enhancing.
Can I add something?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, those fences, an additional safety feature would be, I was 14 once, I don't know about any of you, and I remember a path not being something I would stay on with my bike. I could see kids going all over, off that path, into the playground area, creating maybe some unsafe situations with little children. And I think any kind of a fence along that path would really help not only keep little children in, but keeping potential accidents or just mishaps with kids on bikes or electric bikes going off the path, racing around the playground.
Mm-hmm. That's a good comment. And also I could see that poured in place rubber, it has that really satisfying squish to it. It could be sort of an appealing surface to take a little detour on. Yeah.
As you bring stuff up, do you want us to comment on what you bring?
Yeah, you're more than welcome to. Yeah.
Okay. I concur with the value of a fence, especially on the bike path side. My concern is the electric bikes and scooters that kids are using these days. And then also as a parent, there's some reassurance in knowing you're keeping your eye on your kid, but then maybe you're able to keep an eye on an exit or two rather than the most perimeter of the park. So I do think even if it's a low fence or a split cedar fence or just something that makes it more difficult to cross, seems appealing.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So one comment here on the fencing. We are proposing using donor pickets as our fence paneling. And so actually adding more linear footage of fence gives the city a lot of more opportunity for additional donors that wish to pursue that. So yeah, I support that.
Cool. Was there a question down here?
Chris, you covered my question about, not my question, but just kind of putting out what the public feedback was.
Okay.
So
cool. Yeah, I can keep on trucking through the few things that I saw repetitive, and everyone more than welcome to chime in. Yeah. I know this is sort of premature and it's just an early rendering, but as far as site furnishings, benches with backs, as well as potentially two-sided benches, depending on where it's appropriate. Yeah, some backed seating and maybe, as far as picnic tables go, things with rounded edges, stuff like that. Let's see. One thing, you touched on the zip line. I think if it's not practical now, it's definitely going to be an ask. So in the future, a space set aside for it was I think that's a good route to go. We got a bit of commentary about people who really liked the design overall, thought maybe the younger play area was maybe a little bit less exciting. So I wonder if you have any thoughts that there might be ways to jazz that up a little bit. And as not being a toddler, I'm not really sure what is the most exciting thing to play on, so I'll have to defer to you on that. But
Chris, you had me fooled. But so what we've discovered is that dedicated age 2 to 5 areas often get less use because as you get to the upper end of that 2 to 5 spectrum, the kids get more adventurous and they see the older siblings and peers on the bigger pieces. And so we're seeing them migrate quicker. And so we could certainly explore doing some additional flair on the 2 to 5, but I don't know that I want to allocate more of the overall budget to the 2 to 5 because we just don't see it used as much. Does that make sense?
it does, yeah.
This is Christopher. Just wanted to say overall, like what a great concept, and just anecdotally, my kids just are past the playground stage, so I get a little emotional when I see brand new structures that I can't engage with as much anymore. But great job. I love the multiple hills in the space. I think this, for me, does a lot of justice for around. I think some of the initial concern around what would the current structure be replaced with. It keeps it dynamic and fun and exciting. We have a different theme, but the theme is a lot of fun, a lot of different dynamics within it. One question I have, well, actually, let me make a few more comments. I want to thank the city for their engagement with the community also, and offering time in this space to provide feedback and then opening that space up again. I would say that always thinking about, as we move forward, like engagement with communities that may not have access, like language, et cetera, and encourage we have a new equity rubric that the Community Equity Advisory Committee has, and looking at those as resources for what engagement could look like for accessing barriers that might exist, and just thinking more broadly about that. The one question I had was around the inside of the tower climbing structures. Can you tell me just more about how robust those features are, the ropes and the seating? I think about longevity of our investment and how robust that would be to curb any potential damage that either through play or intentional damage. How I've seen those before, but could you just add some more detail about that?
Yeah, it's a really good question. And there were a few comments in the public feedback about that. The netting and ropes that are in that main rope or the tower are actually steel core that are wrapped with the rope. So it's impossible to visibly cut through it, even with bolt cutters. I mean, you would be there for a week trying to cut through that. So they're very resilient, very robust, been time tested with all sorts of vandalism opportunities. So I'm very confident that is going to stand the test of time. If at some point any of those rope elements do fray or get worn out, they can be replaced as an individual thread or strand, not the whole net system. So they're very modular in a sense.
Great, thank you. One last piece I wanted to comment on was the surface that is being proposed here also is just a great connector for especially multiple abilities. So we think about youth with disabilities. This makes it much more accessible. So I really appreciate that and wanted to call that out.
And that's a comment that we got from a lot of folks too, is making this as accessible as possible, and I think these surfacings do help with that. So, did Heidi?
I mean,
Oh, okay.
I would comment, I'm glad that the surfaces are accessible. These surfaces are extremely hot in even low 70-degree day weather. And I'm wondering if there are other surfaces that we could consider, or does the entire area need to be rubber and plastic? Or could some of it be wood?
I can speak from kind of a maintenance standpoint, if you will. If you start to combine and mix both the PIP surface and the turf, as well as like a mulch surface, it's really hard to delineate that and keep them separate from each other. The mulch always tends to migrate onto the PIP and create kind of an ongoing maintenance concern. So at least from that perspective, doing a full PIP or artificial turf, which is proposed here, is easier from a maintenance standpoint. Blake can speak to this a little bit more, but I would say that this surfacing with its lighter color would probably dissipate heat a little bit better than the black rubber mulch that we currently have, but that's just my initial thoughts on it.
No, Eric, you're exactly right. And we try not to use heavy, dark rubber colors that will absorb some of the solar heat. The artificial turf actually does a really nice job at dissipating that. It has a micro sand infill, and so that surface doesn't get as hot. If you've ever been on an artificial turf athletic field, that does have a different infill material that has a black crumb rubber, which does get pretty warm. So the play surface artificial turf does not retain that same heat. So that's why we really like the combination of the ADA accessibility of it and the non-heat absorption.
Mayor, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I have a question. Thank you. Yeah, I have the same concern that Erin has. I read some of the comments and people talking about the plastic. It could be very hot in summer. So I don't know if we can look at other alternative of, material, but it seemed like there were several comments about the plastic. The other comment is, are we planning to have like a communication board? There was another comment feedback for kids with some sort of disability. It seems like that one is the one. It's a communication board.
Yeah, Blake, could you touch on that communication board?
Yes, there is actually a communication board plan in the playscape, as well as other sort of hidden elements throughout the playground to help with some of the nonverbal kids who are more visually incentivized. A comment about the plastics. So we try to orient slides away from the south-facing slope, which is where we get all the solar gain on slides. So I think some of those comments were focused on burning or injuring kids' legs on hot slides. So what we have seen is that really occurs most on south-facing slides. So we try to avoid that when we can.
Since we were just talking about the artificial turf and the infill, what knowing that infill can migrate a little bit, can you remind me, is the mound, the hill, is that turf or is that PIP?
Anything that's
mounds
I was going to say,
Eric.
correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that everything that's green is proposed to be turf. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry.
and actually the infill in the turf does not migrate. It's embedded in the fibers. Think of the artificial turf is much like the carpet in your home. It has the long strand fibers, and that sand is embedded down in it. So if you haven't vacuumed your living room carpet in a long time, that's kind of what we get. That sand is really impregnated in the fiber.
Okay, that was going to be my question, was if that would migrate at all down slope eventually, but okay, thank you. Aaron, did you have a question?
I'm just curious what your experience is with cork. I hear that that's another accessible material, and I'm just curious what your experience is with cork in playgrounds.
It's a really good question. As far as we know, cork has not been approved by the NPSI as an acceptable safety surface yet. So I love the concept of it. I don't know about the durability. It just hasn't been proven out that I've seen.
All right. Is there a drinking fountain planned anywhere in here, or is there already one in the shelter?
There's one next to the shelter. If you guys recall the lion or the rotary one, it's right on the edge there. So you'll see it here kind of in this proposed picnic area just off of the shelter.
Okay.
It would be just off screen in this area.
I forgot about the lion. How could I do that? A comment I heard a couple times was just rearranging the swing set a little bit so the two baby swings were right next to each other. Seems like a pretty simple swap. And then kind of the last primary item that I had was we did get a number of comments about a nature play type approach. And I understand that kind of on a wholesale project, that's not what this is necessarily, that's not what the scope was for you guys, but it got me wondering, is there an opportunity, particularly in some of the planting beds, to create like a mini nature play area where in lieu of mulch, we have maybe a sand pit with, movable objects, chunks of wood and stumps and stuff like that for like a little mini nature play area under the shade of a tree or something like that. Just something to consider. If it's feasible or possible, it might be a unique addition somewhere. And those
that's a really interesting thought. We will certainly look into that.
Cool. That was the extent of my comments. So what does anyone else like to add?
If you don't mind. So connected to the 11 mulch areas, one commenter mentioned that may be a concern just for Parks Department personnel to maintain. I don't know, Eric, if you've got thoughts about that. I never realized there were 11 until that person pointed it out. And it does seem like a lot, not just to maintain, but possibly just having mulch or wood chips get kicked and fly all over the place.
This is one of the things that comes to kind of like the next stage of concepts of fuel, like the actual materials that are in there. This is something that I wanted to talk with Blake and like I said, I'd like to avoid migrating mulch if possible into the actual playground surface. So I think there's a myriad of different types of materials that can go in there. I've seen some permeable surfacing that allows for, water absorption from trees within those areas, but also doesn't have the mulch migrating. At this point, I think my priority would be keep it as maintenance-free as possible, and then have, both staff and architecture look at a few available options that would allow us to keep it ideally pretty maintenance low. What those exact products are, though, at this point, I'm not quite sure. Just the fact that we have natural planting areas is a priority. We would like to have that, but what that surfacing is, I think, will be yet to be determined.
All right, I'm not seeing any hands up. I don't have, go ahead.
I have some thoughts. I want to give, sorry. I do want to give voice to the comments that talked about the history of Fitchburg or like Kids Crossing, and the fact that, if we look at Kids Crossing in context, the city of Fitchburg has only been an incorporated city since 1981. Kids Crossing was built in 2001 and literally by the hands of the community. And so, a playground can be purchased, but, a place has to be cultivated. And Kids Crossing has really become like part of our, it's part of our identity. And this plan, there's nothing about this plan that pays homage to all of those raw materials that perhaps could be reused and reutilized in some capacity. And I'm really concerned that, like, what does what does this particular proposal, what kind of message does it send? That we're not using some of those materials, incorporating it. We're not working with local artists to do something. I mean, the colors of this structure, I'm concerned about. Like, do we want our park to have one particular section of the park that draws a lot of attention to itself? Or are we looking at a color palette that's cohesive with other areas in the park, that's understated? And so I appreciate all of the effort that went into this. I just am questioning what this represents. What story is this saying about Fitchburg? Yeah, I wanted to put that out there.
No, I appreciate that, Erin. I do want to make note that any previous donators, people were hands on deck creating this existing structure. We still want to say they are acknowledged within the next version of this. That's why we have the pickets here. Now, regarding the actual materials and reusing some of the materials in Kids Crossing, they have exceeded their lifespan. It was built from wood, and there's maybe something that could be tied back into it, but in regards to actually building new features or new structures using those materials, I think that ship has sailed, that the materials reached its expected lifespan. I have seen some things where lumber has been milled, you know, to make other picnic tables or somehow tied into a decoration or design within a feature. I've seen that kind of stuff done. Like if there's a heritage tree somewhere, that tree is milled for something just to have homage to it. But I appreciate the concept or the input.
I'd like to, I think the concern, I like that, that perspective, and just thinking about legacy and community engagement and how important that is. I think, you know, there's ways we could think about that as maybe another way for engagement of capturing that story and acknowledging that part of our story of Fitchburg is we're growing. And so part of that is, you know, we've grown quickly. We're still growing quickly, and part of that is, like, you know, I think of my kids, what that process is of coming from elementary to middle school to high school. That's part of our story too, and so we're welcoming new folks into our city, and we also have to update, I think, many things that may have been deferred from a maintenance perspective, and update things so that we can become current as well and be able to welcome what's in the future. So I think, though, you know, maybe there's a way that we can build a plaque to acknowledge and show a picture of what the structure looked like, and acknowledge the importance of our engagement with community to build that. And that is the spirit for which we want to move forward as we build and grow into the future. I think that's the story that I see, and I'm excited about. And I'm also part of that story as a relatively new person in Fitchburg in the last almost 5.5 years now as well. So I hear that, and I think that's an important piece in remembering our legacy and our history and who we are, but also thinking about who we want to become and who we are becoming currently. I think those are great things, and the importance of community engagement and honoring our past. I actually deal with that every day in my current job. But yeah, so I think that those are great points. I love that.
I want to add to what you just said. With this particular plan and reading the comments, I wonder if we went about it wrong. I mean, the parents who are sitting at the playground day after day, hour after an hour, we get to this point and then we're seeking their input and their feedback. And then I don't see, I mean, in this structure, I don't see big boulders. You know, there are parks that really incorporate new with the old and even work with a local artisan. Now, I'm not saying inherently there's anything wrong with this structure, but is the story saying that we really do value the community members to contribute to the overall design? Do we enlist artisans to create the entrance, or is it just one brand and we just pick from that selection of products? And again, is that is that how we want people to feel when they come to Fitchburg and enjoy our parks?
Chris, if I may?
Oh, yeah.
Regarding, this is not a complete product by any means. We do have to start somewhere for a concept to tailor. We have to have it designed within an allowable budget to work off of that as well. So please consider this by all means our working template for this. So when people are saying, well, it's already designed at this point, what does the public input matter? That's absolutely not the case. That's what we're doing here. We're soliciting input at the next meeting as well as we further discuss these. But we did have to start somewhere to provide scope. We have to design something that's in our budget. If we were to design something that's over our budget, we're already outside of our scope. So we have to start somewhere with it. So hopefully that provides context here and understanding for it.
It provides context, but does the city of Fitchburg or does the Parks Department had a set of values that we give our contractors and designers a lens with which to design? Do we say, hey, we want you to use natural materials where you can. We also want it to be accessible, so use the best rubber and stuff where you can. We value nature. We value, what set of values did the city of Fitchburg give Parkitecture to have the lens with which to design? Because what I'm seeing here is, again, it's inherently a beautiful structure, but I don't see values of nature imaginary play. I don't see a value of, inviting sculpture that's, locally designed, and that's part of our entry point. Again, what are the values that we give our designers? This is a starting point, but how much can we actually go from there? I was recently at Firefly Park in Wauwatosa, beautiful park that incorporates some of these beautiful, new, innovative stuff. But oh my gosh, they have boulders and they have wood platforms and they have sculpture. And the whole space was like, wow, this is really cool. This inherently is nice, but this could be in any school park, playground, or in any town. And so again, is this what we value?
Alderman Aldo. Oh, yeah, sorry. So, go ahead, Heidi.
I just want to I think it's at this point, it's a little late to be asking those questions. If we remember way back when, several years ago, when we started this, the community and the folks that spend the most amount of time at Kids Crossing didn't want to get rid of the original stuff. And now we've redesigned everything, and which is fine. It's beautiful. I mean, I have no objection to it. I just feel like now we're trying to move the ball even further away from where it was with what the original community wanted it to be. I just feel like it's a little late to be asking all these questions, and I guess that's my opinion. I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Alder Maldonado.
So I want to address the particular point of art. Is there a space for public art in this, whether it be murals, designs, other things like that? I feel like that's something I don't see as much of in Fitchburg as in other cities, and I think it would be great to be able to have more public art from local artists in this community.
Blake, I'm sure some areas can be designated for future development of public art. We look at our entryway plaza, perhaps that's an area where we do it. Maybe we solicit local designs for the entry archway or something along that. What I do want to say is trying to capture the essence and the theme and the vibes, frankly, of a wooden structure, the leather style structure that we currently have, is really exceedingly difficult if we don't use those same kind of building materials. So it does inherently have a different feel to it, but we wanted to capture that, and I think that was relayed to Parkitecture in that we want areas where kids can get lost. We want tunnels, we want pathways and alleyways. I think they've tried to accommodate that as much as possible with what we have available for these building materials currently.
Mayor?
Yes, someone mentioned to me that take a look at there is a Palmer Park in Janesville. I don't know, Blake, if you know about that park.
What is the name again, Mayor?
Palmer Park.
Palmer?
Yeah.
L-M-E-R?
Palmer.
Palmer.
You know, that it has some, some infrastructure similar to what we have currently. We have, with the castle and all of that. So, I don't know.
Oh, somebody mentioned that teeter-totter specifically, I remember. That little...
My
thingy.
concern with the current rendering is how inclusive is the playground area. You know what I mean? Like, so if you have a kid with a wheelchair, how far he can go in that playground?
If I may, this entire central structure here that I'm highlighting with my cursor is handicap accessible for wheelchair access.
Okay.
So everything that branches off of this would be accessible either via a caretaker that's, has mobility issues or a child who has mobility issues to make sure that they can still access this central thing, play integrated with kids who do not have mobility issues and feel collective, if you will. It's not easily apparent if you don't know what you're looking for in these drawings, because I did see the comment, is this truly ADA accessible? I would make the statement that yes, it was prioritized in these designs. The surfacing in and of itself is 100% handicap accessible. This interior walkway here is handicap accessible. Now, not every slide and every monkey bar is going to be handicap accessible. We acknowledge that. But I think we have done a good job of incorporating and prioritizing it in these designs. One feature that I want to call out that, frankly, I wasn't even really that aware of until we started discussing some of these concepts is the inclusion of a roller slide here on this hill for those with cochlear implants to intentionally stop static electricity from interfering with them. I didn't really know that was a product, but I would say that handicap accessibility was a base priority for this design.
Yeah, I think one thing that has become clear to me through this process, both in hearing the different presentations about it and then gathering the feedback, is there are a good number of goals that are in conflict with each other, and so we're as a group we're tasked with kind of threading the needle on how to best balance all those different goals. And I don't know, I don't have the right answer to all of them, but we have to balance accessibility with heat. Those two are sort of in conflict with the accessible surfacing and then not being as cool as EWF wood fiber. So, and we also have to balance, of course, cost with all of this and maintenance. But I think that that's something that we really need to keep in mind is if any sort of recommendation we make comes at a sacrifice to something else that the community is asking for, we just need to be aware of that. Because there are going to be trade-offs just by the nature of this type of project. So it's just something I want everybody to think about.
Chris, I love that comment. Thank you for making it. It's a real challenge as a design team to find those perfect blends of all of the wants and asks in a project. I also want to spin back to the comment about the entry and maybe pulling that out of the playground scope and putting that in the hands of a local art team. I love that idea. I think that's a great way to pay it forward, with a nod to the community flair. So fully support that.
That's maybe one feature where reusing some materials might be a little bit more feasible, possibly, maybe not. It might visually be a little bit of a clash with what's there, but it's something to be considered. And actually, Christopher, you mentioned something that I was thinking about, having a display, a picture of the original Kids Crossing, telling the story of how it came together, how it was enjoyed over the years, how it led to whatever this will be, you know, something that shows that, honors it, tells the story of that history, I think would be a really nice feature.
I think within that too, as we think about, again, the piece of engagement, that part of that shows that story, and that remains important to us as a community, that we want community engaged with our processes. And we're going so far as thinking about language and other barriers and access in our design, and want to continue to evolve and do better with that. I think that's an important piece, because that sets our value. I think to one of the concerns that Aaron brought up was, you know, what defines us, and I think that's an opportunity for us to really think about that as we think about what that might look like.
All right. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or feedback? Or I don't have any forms, but is there anybody in the audience that is here to speak to the Kids Crossing? Okay. You're welcome to it. Come on up.
I'm Tara Darnell. I already wrote you guys a really long email, mostly about how you're talking about community engagement, and I've been at every meeting. My kids were at community night out last year. We filled out the forms, and I don't feel engaged at all. I feel like when I read the story on the front of McKee Farms Park now, and it talks about the committees of children from local elementary schools, and thinking about like, what do you dream of? They called them dream parks. This isn't a dream park. This park is in Wanakee. The hill features with the slides, it's there. It's in McFarland. Those communities, the two parents I talked to, I couldn't believe it. They were like, yeah, we got one of these parks. And it really underwhelmed everybody. And there they are on the Parkitecture website. So I get that we're really far in the process. I guess I want to know when I was supposed to speak up to be able to say, like, what could we dream up? Not who can we hire to replace a playground, because that's what you're doing. And that's what was in the budget, and I understand that, but that's not what Kids Crossing was. It wasn't a playground. It was a community-led initiative for people to dream about what could make us different. So I have 7 kids. We have read that thing at the playground. We live right on the, gosh, if you walk on the neighborhood path, you'll know my yard because it's a disaster. And there are kids all over the place. But we had really hoped to dream about this. And my kids saw the pictures and they said, but it's already done. And I know, Eric, I know that it's not already done. But now we're talking about like baby swing placement, you know, like that is already done, guys. So I appreciate all the work that's gone into it. Like I said in my letter, I'm sure that my kids will make lovely memories, but this just was a really lost opportunity. We've been to some amazing parks in different places. This is not going to draw people from across the city. It's not. I've been driving across the city for 12 years for parks. I would not drive for this one because I know that I'd have one closer. So I appreciate all the work you guys do. I have no, I don't have any constructive feedback about this because I think for what it is, it's fine. I'm just sad that this is the direction we went.
Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So if you don't feel like this is the park that we want to do, please stop it here. I am not going to get mad, but if you don't feel that this is going to be the park that we really want to be a community park, and it's going to be like, what is your name, Tara? What she mentioned about being a park that people we want to come here and enjoy, have something unique. We don't have a set date to build this in. I will say to all of you, if you don't feel like this is what we want here, stop it. And we can go back to square one and draft a park that where we feel like it's going to be our park, and maybe we need to put another $1 million because they are not cheap. But this is what I want to say. Let's build something that we feel that we are proud, that is a community park that is going to attract people from all over. They are going to have unique features. That's it.
Thank you.
I think, I always think about engagement and who gets a seat at the table to make a comment and who is engaged and whether they have time to, et cetera. And often also who are the common people that are always there to give a comment and who do we not hear from? And so that's one of the reasons why we provided or formed an equity rubric, is to look at what does engagement look like and how can we do better with that. I think, and that's brand new. So, we don't even know how to necessarily start using that fully, and we're learning in the process. And this is from the Community Equity Advisory Committee. Yes, I think all the things around engaging local artists, what that engagement looks like, I think there's a timeliness piece here that the reality is, as we continue to look at things and hold off, those costs don't go down, they only continue to go up. And so then as costs go up, we have less to work with, we have less features. I'm not saying that is a motivator for me in regards to creating the perfect park or the park that I'm super proud of, but at the same time, there's a need here to replace a park that there's a lot of concerns around safety and updating. There are many aspects of this, although, that I do love about engagement and thought and around accessibility that I think are great. Things that I think about as well are language access, community access. How do we build? So we talk about engagement to build the current park and what that looked like. Are we a community that has that right now? I think, how do we build that as a city? How do we find community members that are stakeholders that want to be part of the process? I don't want to put on a mother with 7 kids to say, be the person to lead that, because there's no way that's possible. But who are the other stakeholders that are that engaged, that want to see that thing, and be the names and part of the next iteration of we're capturing a picture of the next park and telling the story of that engagement and the importance of that as part of our story. I just wanted to make a comment both to the mayor and to the public comment, but I agree, and yet I feel like there's a lot of things that I do like about this. And also another role that I play is on the Verona Area School Board representing Fitchburg, and that's another group of folks that I would love, if there's an engagement process, if this is what we decide that we're not going to do, our schools, our Stoner Prairie and Savannah Oaks and other schools that we serve, our kids, how do we engage there? I don't have any answers other than just making a comment, and so thank you.
Other comments?
I was going to just ask some clarifying procedural questions for how staff should proceed at this point. If you have any recommendations, it's fine. We do not have a decision item tonight. This was a review of the concepts. My recommendation, at least, and open to discussion, is we discussed with Parkitecture some of the comments that were discussed this night, some of the concerns, some of the potential options that we can do, general conceptual designs, if you will, or options that exist in other places that may have more allusions to public art or identity recognition and stuff. And then I would propose that we discuss that at September as a decision item, and it would be referred to Council, the Parks Commission, as a decision item. But I am open to any thoughts, considerations procedurally. Yeah,
I'm very open to hearing from the whole team here too. I think that seems like an appropriate path forward. You know, you in architecture, all of us have all heard the same feedback from everybody, so we know kind of where people's heads are at. And so I think, you know, from a staff point of view and from a design team point of view, if you are able to put your heads together and kind of come up with a recommended path forward, knowing that that could be, you know, a continued evolution of this idea, or it may be, you know, perhaps it's a step back. You know, like the mayor said, we don't have a timeline. You know, we know that this is an urgent need, but it's not, you know, we don't have a grand opening set. You know, it's something that we do want to make sure we do well. So, yeah, I think that will be a good series of next steps, but I'm very open to hearing other people's thoughts on that. Hearing none, I think that's our path forward.
Sounds good. So at the next meeting, it'll be in September, and we'll have this as a discussion decision item.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. Thank you, Katie.
Thank you for coming.